not what he sent me, which was $40, and that was $40 out of his household budget, and he's a pensioner. My boyfriend, who's on SSI, sent me some money to help me out to get groceries, because he could tell that I was just not doing well. I'm just now getting back to the health I was before, but my sugar levels aren't leveled out. Because I had to eat quite a bit of sodium-filled stuff, my blood pressure is a little off kilter, and because of no proper nutrition, I'm feeling not like I'm getting sick, but just sort of that run-down, gross feeling. It's not fair. I don't blame the HRA workers, because I know they're understaffed and they get yelled at enough as it is, and it's not their fault. I would like the people in charge to take accountability, because it's not fair. I'm not the only person. I just happen to be one person out of thousands, maybe. And I also happen to have a medical condition, and there's other people out there who have medical conditions, who have families to feed, that need proper nutrition, and the delays, they're ridiculous.
No,
I'm sure. Thank you for letting me share my story.
How long were you waiting from the time that you stopped receiving SNAP benefits to when they
It was about 2.5 weeks. I received them on September 20th.
So you didn't get the August?
I got the August. I didn't get the September.
Until 2 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's about 2.5 weeks later, yeah. So that 2.5 weeks, because I eat a lot of fresh stuff, so it doesn't usually last too long. So I went a little crazy, and I went ahead and bought like a case of chili, just in case.
What you described is pretty consistent with some of the feedback that we have been hearing. So I really appreciate you coming here today to testify.
Thank you for
letting me lend clarity to a situation that we think carries a certain level of urgency. Thank you.
All right, thank you for hearing my story.
Thank you, Diana. Before we move to Will, I just want to remind everybody that all testimony is going to be limited to 2 minutes for public witnesses. And for those who are joining us on Zoom, please remember that there will be a few seconds of delay when you're unmuted before we can actually hear you. So just take note for those who are on Zoom. So we're going to move now to Will, followed by Ethel Brown, followed by Travis Preston, and over to
And Will, just so you can keep track, we have a timer there, so when you hear the bling bling, that means that your time is up, right? I want to recognize that we've also been joined by Councilmember Leah Williams. Oh, and online. Thank you. You may begin.
Good morning, Deputy Speaker Ayala and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Willie Woods, and I'm an consumer advocate with Urban Pathways, and I also work in various capacities as an advocate for folks experiencing homelessness. I, too, had an outstanding issue with HRA, starting with my recertification in May. And as a result, I've gone from being current on my rent to being over $2,000 in rent arrears due to the rent not being paid by the city. I've gone 4 months without EBT or cash benefits. And I've received no documentation, no final documentation with which I could extend my right for a fair hearing. In addition, specifically to my office, my local HR office in Queens, it's known that you have to get there before 10 a.m. if you want to get seen by end of business. But there's been nights where I know for a fact folks have been there till 8 o'clock trying to get things done. I've spent days, literally, on the phone, 9 to 4, waiting to speak to someone, which is remarkably easy to do when the system also hangs up on you every hour or so, and you have to start over at the end of the queue. Personally, I have Crohn's disease, and that condition requires me to be on a rather specific diet if I'm going to maintain my health. Right now, I'm kind of lucky, and I get to visit my mom to get extra cooking, but right now, the last couple of months, I've been on about 2 meals a day. And I've had to cut back on volunteer and advocacy efforts because I can't afford to travel. It's aggravated my anxiety and my depression. And all of that is really exacerbated by the lack of urgency when dealing with HRA. Simply put, when you're going through homelessness, one thing you learn to identify pretty quickly are those that care and those that don't. And one of the things that you fervently hope is that you get treated the same way that someone else would want to be treated in a similar situation. The reality is, if folks had a different option from HRA, they would have long since taken their business elsewhere. And these issues will only worsen as the number of the people the agency has to service grows. It's hard enough as an adult to have to reach out and ask for help. It's much more difficult to need that help and then to have to grovel to get it. And that's what a lot of us are down to right now, groveling, and we're still not getting the help we need. Thank you for your time.
I appreciate your testimony here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. We're now going to turn to those on Zoom. Over now to Ethel Brown. Ethel Brown, you can begin your testimony once unmuted.
Good morning. My name is Ethel Brown, and I'm here today with the same situations that the former speakers, Diana Ramos and Will Wood, spoke about, and the many others after. I thank you, City Council members and Deputy, for allowing me to speak today. My daughter had the same issues, and so did I, in terms of public assistance and waiting. But thank God for the good advocates that are out there. They helped direct us to the right personnel and social services. She did not have to wait the hours, days, nor months that people usually have those types of problems with delays. It's like you're there sometimes. I remember there being 2 to 8 hours, like I was on a work shift, and I had to make sure I had food, not just for myself, but my grandkid at the time. You sit there waiting on the phones for hours, killing your phone batteries. Sometimes you don't have a place to plug it in because it's blocked in those offices. You have to try to maintain and sustain your health, because you come into the system with no issues, you come out with issues, which I do have some health problems now because of the stress that you've gone through, the mental stress, physical and emotional, of what you have to go through, which you shouldn't have to go through when you're trying to go in to get help. The mayor has to stop these budget cuts because social services is very important. What needs to be done, as people have stated before, as Deputy Ayala said, there should be a way to not have people be delayed in terms of getting assistance. Hire more staff, plain and simple. Have priority sets. No more budget cuts. Social service is a necessity, not just for the people here, but also the immigrants and the refugees. We're in a crisis. Many people are in need of help. This is why we have the Statue of Liberty, which represents that. This is our duty. We are here to help each other.
Thank you,
Not
Ethel.
to, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ethel. We will now turn to Travis Preston for testimony. Over now to Travis Preston.
Hello?
We can hear you.
I'm got my job right now, so I gotta keep it short and simple. All I'm gonna say is that like the HRA situation, like they never sent me a form telling me that I had to recertify. And then when I went to go check my card, it said my food stamps was up there. But then when the day of my food stamps, I was supposed to get it, it wasn't there. And then when you do go back to HRA or you call them, they have you on the phone for like 5, 6, 7 hours. And then when you go in person, the people are rude and very disrespectful. And then when you say something back to them, it's your fault. And that's what I just wanted to say. I don't want to say too much because my patient right here, so.
Thank you, Travis.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Travis, for your testimony, and to this entire panel for your testimony. We are now going to move to testimony from members of the administration. Marika Scott McFadden, Deputy Commissioner for Intergov and Legislative Affairs, Rebecca Chu, Chief Program Officer at HRA, and Angela Johnson, Executive Deputy Commissioner at the Family Independence Administration. Before you begin, will you all please raise your right hand? Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Thank you. You may begin when ready.
Good morning. I want to thank the City Council's Committee on General Welfare.
I'm sorry, Marika, is your mic on?
Yeah, better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning. I want to thank the City Council's Committee on General Welfare and Deputy Speaker Ayala for today's hearing on public benefits access and processing. We look forward to discussing with Council our work to connect New Yorkers to much-needed public access benefits programs. My name is Marika Scott McFadden. I am the Deputy Commissioner for Intergovernmental and Legislative Affairs at the Department of Social Services. I'm joined today by Chief Program Officer at the Human Resources Administration, Rebecca Chu, and Family Independence Administration Executive Deputy Commissioner, Angela Johnson. The New York City Department of Social Services Human Resource Administration is the nation's largest social service agency. Each year, we connect more than 3 million New Yorkers to benefits through the administration of 14 benefit programs. Every day in all 5 boroughs, DSS HRA provides essential programs and supports to low-income New Yorkers. In administering these programs, HRA is at the forefront of this administration's efforts to combat poverty and income inequality. At DSS HRA, we are mindful of the real-life impact benefit processing timeliness has on households. We recognize that programs like cash assistance and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, can make the difference in providing economic and food security. As stewards of these critical public benefits, we are conscious of the care, compassion, and urgency with which we must treat each application. Only 4 months ago marked the official end of the COVID-19 pandemic and a federal public health emergency declaration. But we must bear in mind that not all communities are recovering at the same rate. When we last testified in December of 2022, DSS First Deputy Commissioner Jill Berry highlighted that we were seeing extraordinary demand for public benefits from New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs. At the height of the pandemic in April 2020, the agency received 84,000 SNAP applications in that month alone. That was the highest number of SNAP applications in modern history, reflecting a more than 200% increase compared to the previous year. The trends for cash assistance were just as unparalleled. In March of 2020, DSS HRA received 12,745 more cash assistance applications than March of 2019, a 53% increase. This increased need for cash assistance and SNAP has continued over the last several years into today. In fiscal year 24, the average number of applications per month is more than 36,000 and over 48,000 for SNAP and cash assistance, respectively, showing that New Yorkers have a sustained need for economic supports and food security. In addition to economic drivers, we also believe that increasing access to benefits has led to an increased number of applications. As HRA continues to break down barriers and modernize our service model, we have seen an increase in client utilization of our online platform and mobile app, Access HRA. New Yorkers no longer need to apply in person at brick and mortar centers. They can simply apply on their computers and smartphones. DSS HRA has worked to keep up with the increased volume of applications by employing several strategies. First, we have utilized existing staff through redeployment and reassignment, as well as overtime on evenings and weekends. Our human resources team has pursued an aggressive strategy around recruitment, hiring, onboarding, and retention, which has resulted in 728 positions onboarded since we last testified on this topic in December 2022. We continue to look to our state and federal partners to extend or expand waivers that increase efficiency and allow processing to move along more quickly. Unprecedented need has outpaced our resources, and we are using every tool and strategy at our disposal to meet the demand. For example, state and federal waivers were used to improve client access by transitioning from only in-person interviews as part of the cash assistance application process to allowing these interviews to occur by phone at the client's chosen time, just as we were permitted to offer SNAP clients. Following advocacy by DSS, a state law has made this remote cash assistance option permanent, meaning that clients can conduct all business online and by phone, making it more convenient for New Yorkers to access the services they are entitled to. I would also like to update Council on a concern expressed by many Council members at last December's hearing: fraud and skimming from EBT cards. At that time, theft of benefits would result in permanent loss of funds with no chance of reimbursement. However, because of recent state and federal action, that is no longer the case, and we have stood up a program to assist victims of this crime. As of September 19th, 2023, we have received over 19,000 claims for reimbursement of SNAP and our cash assistance benefits. We have processed about 15,000 applications. 100% of these claims have been processed timely. To date, about 2/3 of approved replacement benefits have been added to clients' EBT cards, restoring over $4.5 million in benefits to New Yorkers. Before I discuss the legislation under consideration, I would like to take a moment to highlight the incredible work of DSS HRA staff. In the face of a global health emergency and pandemic, staff has worked tirelessly to process benefit applications to ensure their fellow New Yorkers have access to essential benefits and supports. Their work continues to this day to support New Yorkers impacted by economic realities, and we thank each and every one of them for their dedication to the needs of the vulnerable among us. Moving to legislation. We give careful and thoughtful consideration to proposed legislation and are mindful of our role as the safety net of the safety net and our obligation to provide essential benefits to New Yorkers. Further, we ask Council to keep front of mind the legal and regulatory obligations DSS, HRA, DHS is subject to at both the state and federal level. We also encourage you to consider the fiscal impacts of proposals that would require significant staff and facilities investment. Intro 647 would require that the sheriff and city marshals contact the Department of Social Service, HRA, when they receive an order that would result in housing displacement. Where HRA receives notice from the sheriff or city marshal about an order that would lead to housing displacement, HRA would be required to respond by examining the person's eligibility for legal counsel, provide the person with contact for legal counsel, and connect individuals to such counsel. We recognize the importance of focusing resources at the early stages of the legal process. Examples of this include connecting tenants to legal services through right to counsel, attorneys at housing court, and connecting tenants to rental assistance resources. We believe focusing the Office of Civil Justices and legal providers' finite resources earlier in the process delivers more value to the tenants and gives them the most opportunity to remain in their homes. This legislation also would not curtail the marshals or sheriff's authority to execute the eviction order. We look forward to working with council and the bill sponsor to reach our shared goal to continue to bring legal services to tenants. Intro 567 would prohibit homeless families with children from being temporarily housed in private buildings with more than 5 Class C housing maintenance code violations. Current homeless families with children in such buildings would be permitted to remain, but no additional families with children would be housed in such buildings until corrective action has been certified by the Department of Housing Preservation and Development. Safety is a continued concern and priority for all our DSS-DHS clients. Currently, shelters are subject to rigorous inspections of inhabitability, both before shelters are occupied by families and on a regular basis. We acknowledge the shared goal of safety and protection of our clients and provide and private building tenants. However, this proposed legislation may have an unintended consequence of duplicating inspection requirements and perhaps most importantly, slowing GH's ability to rapidly move to rapidly provide shelter space for homeless families. Intro 651 would preclude the Department of Homeless Services from requiring that every member of the family be present at its intake center when the family seeks placement at shelter. DHS's Prevention Assistance and Temporary Housing PATH Intake Center plays a critical screening role when connecting families with children experiencing homelessness with assistance. Screenings and connections to assistance undertaken at PATH include child protective and family support services, domestic violence assistance, medical assistance, and school-related supports. Currently, all members of the household are required to appear, and children under the age of 18 can appear either in person or remotely at intake, but are not required for any subsequent visits. We again look forward to consultation with council and the bill sponsors toward a shared goal of protecting young children and their families experiencing a crisis. Intro 653 would, in an effort to combat the city's opioid epidemic, require the Department of Social Services to offer access to drug treatment services at hostel facilities and Department of Homeless Services to offer access to drug treatment services at all shelters. Tackling the opioid epidemic and providing necessary services to assist those facing substance use disorder are critical shared goals. However, mandating on-site facilities, as this legislation envisions, would have significant impact on our facilities and programs. We strongly urge a delivery model that focuses on connecting clients to clinicians and health facilities that can deliver the services this legislation seeks to prescribe through referrals in community. This ensures that clients who need assistance are referred to quality and specialized clinicians, but does not make a broad assumption that all those in DHS facilities are living with HIV or managing a substance use disorder. Referrals in community also have the advantage of avoiding potential privacy concerns that arise from on-site services. We believe the goal of providing services to this population of New Yorkers are currently being met through in-community referrals. Intro 741 would require Department of Homeless Services to inspect radiators during any inspection related to health, safety, or the physical condition of a homeless shelter. DHS already inspects radiators as part of an annual health and safety inspection and manages specific concerns or issues with units when they arise. Intro 902 would require the Department of Homeless Services to provide process navigators services to every family with children at an intake center. The process navigator would provide assistance to shelter applicants in understanding all the procedures, meetings, interviews, and documents necessary to the application process and respond to questions. We acknowledge the clear goal to ease challenges of clients as they navigate the process of obtaining temporary housing. This is a stressful time, and our intake staff are trained to seamlessly work with clients at every point during the process. The intake center at PATH is the unique front door that families must walk through. It is unique because by design, it is tailored to meet families where they are and provide individualized tools, services, and connections for families. We are concerned that adding a navigator to this process would impact this carefully designed process and represent a costly budget expansion. We look forward to the continued dialogue regarding fully realizing the intent of this proposed legislation. Intro 910 would mandate a report on the feasibility of creating a universal benefits application for local public benefit programs and mandate the creation of a universal benefits application as determined feasible by the Commissioner of the Department of Social Services. This bill would also codify Access NYC, which is a screening tool for public access programs, direct the incorporation of new and existing programs as deemed possible, and require increased public awareness efforts of such tools. We appreciate the goal of streamlining and simplifying the public benefits application process. It is important to recognize that benefit applications are subject to both federal and state laws and regulations. These forms are subject to approval by both federal and state oversight authorities. In addition, assessment of eligibility of public benefits in a preliminary way is prohibited by state and federal regulations. And DSS always wants to encourage anyone who believes that they are eligible to apply. We perceive the goal of this proposed legislation is to join up public benefits to streamline access for clients. However, we see obstacles to fully reaching the goals of this legislation as written and are happy to speak further with the council regarding these challenges. I will conclude by again recognizing our frontline staff has played a critical role in working towards more timely processing benefits. Their dedication to the task, willingness to take up overtime, and adaptability in adapting new workflows have all been critical to the success we had thus far. We have made important strides forward in our processing of public benefits. We acknowledge the urgency and the seriousness with which we must continue to take on these challenges. We also wholly acknowledge that we have further work to do. Our frontline staff's continued diligent work on this issue will see us through to successful, timely processing of benefits. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. We are happy to take your questions.
Thank you, and I want to acknowledge that we've also been joined by Councilmember Rustler. I was looking forward to this hearing because I don't believe that I have ever, in my time in the council, and even in my time as a staffer for a former council member, received as many complaints as I have in the last few weeks regarding folks that have not received their SNAP benefits. People who have expressed that they are receiving cash benefits, but for some reason they didn't get their food stamps, and there was no explanation, and they couldn't really pinpoint what the actual problem was, whether they had whether their case had been, closed, or, benefits were discontinued, or the dates were changed. Like, there was no information provided to these families. And so when I get one call, okay, when I start to get upwards of 10, and sometimes from the same family, living in different apartments, and they're all telling me the same thing, that's alarming to me. I think, we've discussed the need to truly, address the issue of food insecurity in the city, and that in certain communities, and you guys, know this very well, by virtue of the work that you do, we have created what I call pockets of severe poverty. And there are families that, rely on these public benefits. And somebody mentioned at the December hearing, families cannot eat retroactively, right? It doesn't matter if I'm getting those food stamps. Was that you? Give you credit. We can't, if you're getting a benefit 3 weeks after the fact, right? That's 3 weeks too late. And although I love and appreciate, my food pantries, I've also, seen, right, that, and I know that the type of food that we get in a box distribution is great. And listen, my mother would cook a nice stew with the meat that we would get in that can, and it was delicious. She fed us with, she was able to supplement our meals with food pantry, meals, but it's not enough, right? And so I'm concerned. I'm really concerned. And I know that we were here in December and we were already in trouble. And I know that back then, the rationale was that we were not getting the same level of exemptions that we had been receiving throughout the pandemic, to extend the recertification dates, to allow more time, and that way there wouldn't be an interruption of services. But here we are, now almost a year, later, in an even worse situation than we were last year. And so I would really want to steer away from using the pandemic as a reason for why we're here, because it's 3 years later and we're just trending downward at this point. And I really need to understand why. So that's the question.
So thank you, Council Member, Deputy Speaker. I think that we highlight the pandemic because we know that out of our collective experience, there were needs that came up at that time. There were certain reliefs that were afforded at that time, and that helped a lot of people. And coming out of the pandemic, those people still need help. So we highlight that for that reason. And then also we continue to work with our state partners to be able to receive waivers that are effective in moving us through the collective process of recertification. As I highlighted in the testimony, one example being that we are now able to take interviews by phone and by on demand. So clients we can reach them at the time that they are available instead of just calling. And I'll just add also that now our calls say HRA as opposed to being blocked numbers. So folks can identify that they're getting a call, and the call that they've been waiting for. So that is helpful.
But that doesn't explain why folks are waiting, why the delays are so significant, and why we're in a worse off position than we were almost a year ago. I mean, I had to, I have a constituent services staffer in my office. We saw an influx of people coming in after the pandemic. We hired a second one. If there's a demand for even more, then we get somebody else to ensure that we're still able to meet our mandate. It's a very simple thing, the money is in the budget to hire folks. We had all of these hiring halls, so, I'm just trying to make sense of it. So let me backtrack a little bit. What can you explain to me what the unit that is in charge with the recertification process looks like? How many staff are assigned to that specific division? And I really want to just emphasize that I am very appreciative of the work of all of the workers that show up every single day. I understand that it is very stressful work. And it's a really big deal when you have somebody's livelihood in your hands and you're responsible now for ensuring that somebody is eating. And I respect that work. So I don't want anyone to feel like this is an attack on the work, but rather an attack on a process that obviously is failing. And the fact that it hasn't been rectified and that a corrective action plan hasn't been presented is bothersome. This to us is a serious emergency, and so, if you could explain who handles that, how many staffers. I know that we did some hiring halls, but it's not very clear how many people we lost through attrition and whether or not that kind of kept us at the same level. What does that look like? Walk me through it.
I'll just begin by saying we do realize that there are challenges, and as I said in the testimony, we've been able to onboard over 700 staff, but including onboarding includes training and making sure that folks are properly acquainted with what the work that they must do. So where we acknowledge that the challenge still exists, and we're still going through the process. We're still doing what we feel are efforts to get past the delays in processing, and I'll ask my colleague to continue with the specifics on that.
Thank you.
Good morning, Deputy Speaker, and thank you for your questions. I think to frame it, to answer your question around what is driving this, there is an incredible need that has started in the pandemic and has not abated in this city. So just to give you some numbers to understand it, for cash assistance applications, so far, just for fiscal year 23, the average is about 40,000. During the height of the pandemic, it was 35,000. Fiscal year 19, it was 23,000. So you can see that's an average 7,000 more cash assistance applications. Similarly for SNAP, fiscal year 23, the average is about 40,000. For March through April, 71,000. In fiscal year 19, it was 25,000. So we have addressed that by understanding we were faced with attrition rates just like, I guess, the rest of the country. And so we've undertaken very aggressive measures, and I'm glad you mentioned the hiring halls because HRS attended 19 just from March to August, and many council members supported and attended those as well. We work with Business Link, and that's actively supporting our cash and SNAP benefit recipients in finding employment and better employment, including opportunities through HRS. And so with all those extra efforts, along with things like LinkedIn, so when a city flyer gets posted, it gets posted on LinkedIn at the same time. And we've developed those partnerships. We work with faith-based organizations, CBOs. Last time you had asked about community colleges. We do partner also with CUNY and Columbia again, we want to broadcast our positions, aggressively fill these positions, and thanks to those efforts, we are making progress. We are making progress.
So in 2019, where we were seeing 23,000 applications, how many staffers were assigned to SNAP benefit recertification cases, as opposed to the number today? How does that compare?
We'll have to get back to you on that comparison, but we can look at the, you have the number for SNAP now.
I know that we don't have that specific number, and we can obviously get back to you with a comparison of 2019 positions as opposed to now. What we all want to stress, of course, is the efforts that we've made since our last testimony, where we really have listened to counsel and we've listened to our need, and we've been working to get hired up and onboarded that great number of folks. So I understand the question, I follow it.
I understanding and acknowledging that, you know, that you guys were very present in the hiring halls, but we're still worse off today than we were almost a year ago. And I still haven't really heard what the justification for that is, other than it might be staffing related. I mean, I'm not really understanding, and you know, again, I respect the work that you do, but, you know, I'm expecting that when you guys are coming here to testify, that you're gonna have, you know, the information that we're gonna require of you, right? And if we understand that the number of applicants has grown significantly, obviously the questions are gonna be primarily around, you know, how are you addressing that? And so I'm hoping that you would be able to tell me, council member, we have a department of, you know, 100 staffers that are assigned to work specifically on SNAP benefits. We've increased that from the previous 50 because of the influx. Like, that is the type of data that helps us better understand what is happening on your end, right? Because other than that, there's a lot of ambiguity and a lot of space for us to kind of, you know, make up our own, in our own imagination, right, scenario of what's happening. And it seems like just, you know, the agency is not prioritizing SNAP benefit applicants in the way that they should be. And that's worrisome. And I don't want to assume that. I really don't want to assume that. I want to give you the benefit of the doubt, but we're talking about, you know, a substantial amount of applications that have not been completed. You know, we're at 29, is it 29% completion rate? Like, that's horrible. I mean, that's like an F, you know, capital F with a whole bunch of red lines under. Like, how do you justify that? That's not something that I would be proud of.
Well, I'm going to allow my colleagues to add on, but I will say that this is not taken lightly within the HRA. Daily, weekly conversations and meetings are had in order to try to do better at this. We acknowledge that we do need to do better. Some of the tactics that we've used in terms of strategy is redeployment, reassignment of our internal staff. We've of course done voluntary overtime for evenings and weekends, and we've been doing that regularly as we've seen this challenge occur. And then onboarding and hiring as well. We feel like we're doing a multifaceted approach to a problem that increases monthly. What do I mean by that? We're getting higher numbers of applications monthly. So it's a bit of trying to put all of it together, and we're not at the same number. We have this increased need, we acknowledge that, and we are looking forward to seeing all of these efforts come to a completion where we are timely and our numbers are back up.
Okay, so you have some homework to do. You owe me some numbers here.
Absolutely.
Now, in terms of, so I'm just going to just ask you some general questions, and I hope that, you know, we get some answers to these. But regarding the cash and the SNAP and cash assistance, how many delayed SNAP cases are overdue, and how many cash assistance cases are overdue? And how long have clients had to wait to receive their food stamps?
Thank you for your question, and noting, we do have 1 million SNAP cases, which is including 1.7 million individuals in receipt of SNAP, about 275,000 cash cases, which equals about 500,000 recipients of cash assistance benefits. Our most recent data from August 31st of this year indicates that there are a total of 1,574 overdue SNAP cases that we are prioritizing to resolve and make sure that those cases are looked at carefully and processed, and that clients get every single benefit they are entitled to when we process that case. For cash assistance, the number is 30,722 that are overdue. That, again, we are laser focused, and as my colleague pointed out, we have employed several measures to increase our capacity and bandwidth to process each and every one of these cases, including overtime projects, call to action, agency-wide, aggressive recruitment and onboarding and training of our new staff, and many mentoring programs in place and staff morale boosting programs, because we also want to retain the excellent, wonderful frontline staff we have that do this work day in, day out.
If they're working nights and weekends, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Especially at the rates that they get paid, that's another conversation for another day. But, why is there such a big disparity between cash assistance and SNAP benefits? Is it that you process them differently? Because if I have a case where if I'm getting both cash benefits and food stamps in one case, why are they processed
So
in that way?
the cash cases can either be cash-only cases or cash with a SNAP component. So that number I cited earlier with 500,000 individuals receiving cash assistance, that could be cash assistance only or cash with a SNAP component, whereas the 1.7 million SNAP only, that's the SNAP only recipient cases. I hope that answered your question, Deputy Chair.
And how delinquent are you? And what is the average amount of time that a client is waiting to actually receive those benefits? The ones that are delayed.
Yeah, by federal and state regulations, we are to complete processing applications within 30 days or a shorter time frame. If it's an immediate need application, we'll have to look into average times for you and circle back.
Is that 30 days prior to the expiration or 30 days after?
It's from date of application.
From the date of the application? But these are recertifications, so theoretically, I'm not applying, well, I don't know, so it would be probably nice to know how many of these are new applicants versus how many of them are recertifications. Are we seeing a delay on the new applicants side are a little bit higher than the ones on the recertifications?
Oh, sure. So it's actually higher on the application side. So
On the new applicants?
Pardon?
On new applicants?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the difference is?
Yes. So for cash assistance, again, going back to August 31st of this year, the overdue application volume is about 27,000, whereas for the research, it's about 3,000. On the SNAP side, the overdue applications is 1,400 range, and then the research overdue for SNAP is 96, under 100.
Okay.
So it's, yeah.
Okay. Guys, you're not making this easy for me. I'm just, again, I think we're ill-prepared with information, but also with a plan of action, to really truly address this. So I'm gonna just move on. I'm not gonna ask you about, the corrective action plan, because I think it's pretty obvious that the corrective action plan includes more hiring. I would suggest that you really seriously have a conversation with OMB about maybe decreasing the head count and increasing the pay rate for, the time being, if that, or increasing the pay rate without having to decrease the workforce, but something has to give. These many of these workers, I don't know if the agency really, understands that the level of dedication. A lot of your staff, has been around for 20, 30 years. Like, these are people that have an, invested interest in doing the work that they do. They should be compensated accordingly. They should be able to continue to live, in the city and, make ends meet. They shouldn't have to work, around the clock to be able to make that up, right, with overtime. And I just, I think it has to be said, because I keep hearing from every agency, well, we're understaffed. Yeah, but you're also underpaying your, employees. And I don't see there being a real call to action on the, administrative side, asking for an increase in pay. We recently went through this whole human services, contracts, and, how we're paying our nonprofits barely nothing to do this work. And the same applies to the city workforce. It's really, and this is through no fault of anyone sitting here, but, it has to be said. All right, I'm gonna take a little pause while I kind of gather my thoughts, and I'm gonna call on a couple of members. 5 minutes per member, please. So we're gonna start with Councilmember Stevens, followed by Caban, followed by Aviles, and then followed by Councilmember Ressler. Councilmember Stevens.
Good morning. I'm feeling kind of similar to Deputy Speaker, just a little taken aback by like the lack of clarity around numbers and feeling like we're constantly in this cycle of not getting all the information, which is why we keep coming back to the same type of hearings. And so, one, I just want to start just with the vacancies and staffing, because I hear that you guys are going to the hiring halls, and that's been a big thing for the agencies, but I'm also hearing that a lot of people who, even when they are told at the hiring halls they're going to be called back, are left in limbo for months and haven't heard anything. So can you tell me how many people from these hiring halls, you said you went to 19, from them 19, how many were hired, and are they still on staff currently?
So just to reiterate from my testimony, we've been able to onboard over 700 folks, including folks that we've received applications that have gone through the hiring halls, our increased efforts through LinkedIn and other avenues, and we think we've had some great success with that. Similar to the point, or to also add in the point Deputy Speaker Ayala made, in terms of pay rate, we're now able to hire folks at the incumbent rate, so that is a bit higher than before. So it speaks to the Deputy Speaker's point of being able to hire at a higher rate, and then have that position be more attractive for folks.
So part of my question too was, out of the 700, how many that you hired are still there currently? Because we're also hearing that people are quitting. And to even go with that, how many people from that 700 are still there?
I can't speak to the retention rate. I don't have that number. Happy to circle back. I understand the council member's point in terms of just this being very difficult work. This is hard work. We're asking a lot of our folks, and they have delivered for us in many ways. So I will get back to you. Even
with the 700, you don't have that number, but how many employees in the past month have quit from HRA? Do you have that number?
I absolutely do not have that number, but I can get that for you. Absolutely.
So it's disappointing, right? Like, so you guys are coming here to talk about the deficiencies and the things, and we're in a crisis, but you don't have the numbers of how many people who've left in the past month or in the past quarter. So that's also telling, right? So then how do we then do our oversight and get this information? So that's really telling and really disappointing. Another question I have is just around, I need you to stop.
If I might
Have
add-
from other agencies, have you considered deploying staff from other agencies to assist with the backlog? If not, why? And this should be an all hands on deck. So if there are other agencies, have you like reached out to other agencies throughout the city and working with other deputy mayors and other commissioners to get folks to come and support this so we can address the backlog? Has that happened?
So, I know that there are restrictions on the processing of these applications, and there are specific who and how they are processed. And so, unfortunately, I don't have the exact parameters that would maybe even perhaps prohibit what you're suggesting. But I will certainly take this idea in. And work it through internally, and we're looking for what you said, all hands on deck, and we've certainly been doing that internally. And I'd like to also highlight that unfortunately, when we do come to testify, sometimes we don't have data-specific questions, which they have to be run in advance, and we don't have that information because we don't have that sort of, front of mind or right at hand. So whenever possible, when we can have data questions in advance for specific numbers, we obviously want to be partners with council and bring that information so that we can have clarity and transparency.
So even with because you talked about the backlog and being all hands on deck and trying to get other people from other parts of administration, this was done with the prior administration, so why can't we do this now? Because it is a crisis, we have a huge backlog, so I don't necessarily understand why we would have to figure this out when it's been done in previous administrations. And if you allow me just one more question, what is the number of positions that HRA needs in order to eliminate the current processing delay for applications and recertification? Because I know you said you don't have all data points, but in your opinion, what do you guys think that you need in order to get up to speed with hiring and staffing?
I think at this point, we again, as I spoke to before, this is more than just a staffing issue. We do have an increased demand. I don't think that we can. We have a specific number of how many new hires would relinquish that backlog. We continue to work with the folks that we have. We continue to have a lot of conversation about what we can do to highlight the work that our staff is doing, and it's important work. I know council knows that, but in terms of specific numbers, we don't know what that number might be.
So I just want to say I'm a little just disappointed, right? Like, this means you guys have no idea what staff you need in order to clear the backlog. You don't know how many staff have been retained in the last month. And so at this point, it's like we actually don't, it kind of sounds like you guys don't know how to get out of this crisis. And so that to me is really unacceptable. And so thinking about what is the plan, and especially when coming to testify about such a crisis, and we have people talking about how they are literally starving because they don't have the food that they need, is really, really sad. And we really need to really think about what that plan is to really move out of this, because saying that you don't know how many staff or what you need to get out the crisis, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Caban.
Thank you, and thank you for being in the hot seat. I don't doubt for a second that you all and every single person working at your agencies care deeply about the provision of services because of how critical and essential that they are. I just want to take something that you said on the record a moment ago, that it's more than just a staffing issue. And even that statement alone acknowledges the fact that there is a staffing issue. There is no getting around it. And this will not be solved without an increase in capacity, an increase in manpower, an increase in staffing. And I think that this administration, and particularly this mayor, has made it impossible for you to do that with 15% pegs and hiring freezes. So I mean, if we're processing at 29%, and I actually want to focus on the skimming numbers for a second, because now y'all are being charged with tackling this really, really big problem as well. And unfortunately, in your testimony, it tells a little bit of a different story about the agency's capacity to address this than what is actually the reality that we're experiencing in our communities, right? In your testimony, you wrote that as of September 19, 2023, we've received over 19 claims for replacement. We've processed about 15,000. 100% have been processed timely. 2/3 of the replacement benefits have been added to EBT cards. But my office met with the Community Engagement Unit plus the Deputy Director of Administration to get additional, 2 weeks ago, to get additional skimming facts. And the information we were provided by HRA was that 22,000, at that time, New Yorkers, they knew to have been impacted by skimming, so that's above the 19,000, but that the agency estimates the actual number is closer to 60,000. And so if we have helped 15,000, but there are 60,000 out there potentially who have had their benefits skimmed, there's a huge gap in rectifying that. We were told that in our district, 10 to 15% of all constituents with cash assistance in several of my zip codes have experienced skimming in the past few months. And so that means that if our office speaks to somebody about their SNAP benefits, there is a really high likelihood that their benefits have been skimmed. And so now we have this claims process, and I promise I'm going to get to a question, but you're saying that you're working on the EBT and cash assistance clinics, and we're doing a clinic with y'all, but we've only just learned about the rolling out of the program, and we have this October 31st as the final date to submit claims. It's not a lot of time. Is that going to be extended? Will there be waivers available so that we can extend the time that we can submit claims, especially when y'all are acknowledging that the number of people affected is, 2, 3, maybe 4 times of what we know concretely to be the case?
Thank you, Councilmember. I think, we are incredibly grateful that there is an opportunity now through changes in law on the federal level, state level, that clients who have been the victims of skimming or fraud now can have an opportunity to get replacement benefits for those much, much needed critical food on the table.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the time is super precious. There's not a lot of time left. So my direct question is, are you going to allow issues of waivers or extend this timeline to submit claims? Because it sounds like we haven't yet even begun to scratch the surface on reaching the people who have been affected by this. And so if it closes on October 31st, there are going to be a lot of people who don't get made whole. That's my question. Will there be a waiver or an extension of this timeline, acknowledging the fact that the agency has said that this number is likely to be 3 or 4 times what has been recorded?
Right, so thank you. I can say that of the initial 22,000 that we, thought had been skimmed based on, claims submitted or, information we received, there was an outreach effort to those 22,000 with our partners and outreach partners to support and make sure that they were aware of the process and to provide support in applying for those benefits. Our process of replacing skim benefits is only barely a month old into it, and we are very pleased with the fact that over 19,000 claims have been submitted and over 4.5.
Do you have plans to extend it? I have no time left, and my question is simple. Do you have plans to extend the waiver? Because it seems really, really clear that helping the number of people we need to help is not going to happen without an extension. Are there plans to extend that October 31st deadline? And then, Chair, if I could ask one more question in addition to that.
Yeah.
I think that, thank you for that question. I think that at this time, we are not aware of the waiver having been put into process, and we will absolutely have circle back to council when we have confirmation of any waivers that are put into process. We understand the need as you stated, that there is an additional need, and we're not at this time aware of how that will be accomplished, whether it's through a waiver or some other.
I know my other colleagues will hit some of the questions I was hoping to be able to ask with my time, so I'm going to ask a totally separate question. The federal farm bill is currently being debated in Congress, and so the people of Puerto Rico are excluded from accessing SNAP. Has the administration taken a position on this, and would HRA and City Hall, by extension, support the inclusion of the people of Puerto Rico, since we like to say that Puerto Rico is the 5th borough in SNAP? Do you guys, have you taken a position? Do you support that? Would you support the extension of support for that inclusion?
Unfortunately, we do, I don't think that we're able to take a position on that today. I'm not 100% familiar with where that process is, and so we would absolutely have to review that as an agency before we can take a position.
Thank you.
Councilmember Aviles?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all the representatives of the agency here. And, you know, it is important to note that our inquiry, our passion, our upset is not directed at the workers who we know are underwater. It is directed at a system that is right now, as we all very well know, the mayor announced a 5th round of cuts to agencies. And we see firsthand in our offices and also work with constituents reapplying over and over and over again for benefits and sitting with them when they can't get the food that they need and trying to find food for folks on an everyday basis. So this is not about the workers. This is about a system that is setting us up to fail over and over again and continuously proposing cuts. This administration has proposed even more cuts to this agency when we can't even keep up with the pace of need for New Yorkers. So our upset and anger is certainly directed there, but also wanting answers in earnest. So I wanted to, in terms of, I didn't hear, what would the agency need in terms of staffing to be able to manage this current caseload, and how many cases do the staffers who manage benefits are currently holding?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of your question.
What's the caseload for each staff member that are processing these cases currently?
So there, in regards to caseload, there is no caseload. The applications are processed as they come in, so workers are not assigned a caseload. You didn't hear a number because we did not have a number to share. At this time, we don't have a specific number that we can say will be the golden bullet or that
so
will
in
get
20
us there.
you cited the case numbers over the past several years and showing how they've ballooned in currently. What was the peak of HRA staffing under some of those other years where they had even lower caseloads? Because we can extrapolate that you need more, right, to manage properly a certain level of cases that you have been processing historically.
Yes, we didn't have those numbers. We will assign them according to how we've reported today, where we looked at our peak number in April of 2020. We're happy to share what our staffing was at that time versus our current staffing. We'll follow up with that.
It is truly alarming that an agency that has historically processed SNAP cases, has followed trends of boom and bust, has no sense of its staffing need and capacity during this time. It is truly alarming. In terms of the bill that's introduced, you noted that I'd agree that it's very important for intro 647. we noted certainly that it is important, obviously, to get residents information much earlier on in the process, especially if we as a city are committed to stopping evictions. But would you say that the current process is sufficient?
I think that the process that we're, the utilizing right to counsel at housing court is one that is that we're working through the process. We're meeting tenants there. We've had the opportunity to launch a pilot in Brooklyn Housing Court where we've placed HRA resources within the court system. We've co-located there, and we'll be expanding that throughout the housing courts throughout the 5 boroughs. So
are you aware of how many evictions are taking place on a monthly basis over the past year?
I don't have the number of how many evictions on a monthly basis.
Are you aware of the ballooning number of evictions that we are currently facing in the city?
Absolutely. This agency, as it stands, is and the mission statement is anti-poverty and anti-homelessness, and we seek at every turn to make sure that folks remain in their homes.
And so, just for the record, I mean, the bill essentially says inform, to inform people of the resources that they should have at their disposal that can potentially help them, which from, cost-saving, cost-cutting measure, if we don't inform our residents of their rights and resources, we pay triple. Because what will happen is residents will then become part of the housing, the homeless shelter system, and we continue to create trapdoors as opposed to circling the wagons around people. So I find it surprising that informing residents feels too cost prohibitive or that it's too downstream. There is no moment in time that is inopportune to inform residents of their right and resources that we as a city are working so hard to marshal. So I just, want to note that we should be making this attempt at every part of this process very early on. I agree. Right to counsel, clearly we need to fund that even more. In fact, there are many improvements we can make to the system. But to say at the point of eviction, as a family is going through that our city cannot inform residents, or it feels redundant or not the best value for the buck, I would argue that every point to save a family from and having to experience violent evictions is an important and worthwhile effort. And lastly, for the record, we need to fully fund social services. So we are here in support, obviously, of that effort. But what we are seeing a continuous defunding and depending on other unsupported agencies, namely nonprofits, to fill that void. Our government has a responsibility to do right by New Yorkers fully and unequivocally. So thank you.
I would just like to say that we have shared goals in keeping folks in their homes. Council and bill sponsor, as well as the agency, we enjoy those shared goals. We're happy to continue having conversations with you. We just simply highlight the front end where we feel the finite resources are getting value. But again, happy to continue conversation.
No, that's fair. But with thousands of evictions actually proceeding and ballooning numbers, I think we need to think about all parts of the process. Thank you so much for your partnership.
I want to recognize that we've also been joined by Council Members Riley, Osei, and De La Rosa. Councilmember Ressler.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker Ayala, and for your leadership and attention to this matter and the staff to support the General Welfare Committee. I want to just firstly strongly echo the sentiments of Councilmember Stevens and Aviles. I strongly agree with the points that they raised. We were here 10 months ago when this situation was very bad. And we had more senior staff from HRA before us than we do today. and yet the situation has gotten catastrophic. 10 years ago, I was working in the mayor's office and was helping to launch the IDNYC program. We selected HRA as the home agency for that initiative because it was the Get Stuff Done agency. But it's not anymore, not under this mayor, not when 6 out of 10 people who are applying for cash assistance aren't getting it on time, when 7 out of 10 people who are applying for food stamps aren't getting it on time. It used to be nearly 100% on both fronts when he entered office. I walk out the door every day of my house. There are 3 different HRA centers in the downtown Brooklyn area. All of them have lines around the corner, down the block. People are struggling, people are suffering, and it is most of all because we don't have the staff. I believe in the work that HRA can do, but you can't do it without people. And this administration has done an absolutely inadequate job in staffing the agency to meet the needs of the most vulnerable New Yorkers. It is beyond disheartening and disturbing. It is causing anguish for our neighbors each and every day. We see it as the council members who are helping constituents navigate your bureaucracy, and we can't get anyone's attention because you don't have staff. So I just want to come back to Councilmember Stevens' point to start. And I have to say how disappointed I am in your inability to answer questions, so I'm hoping you're going to do a little better now. Legal Aid Society sued you all, rightly, because you are failing to deliver for the basic needs of New Yorkers. Over the course of this year, what is the net increase in the HRA headcount?
That was the number that we stated in our testimony.
728 positions were hired.
We were onboarded since December.
And how many left? How many people left? Net increase.
How many?
We want the retention data. The staff for the General Welfare Committee sent us all the questions to you a week in advance, and you have a court order, or you're working with a judge where you have said staffing is the biggest challenge for you all to catch up and do your work. I assume that HRA leadership is tracking the headcount of the agency on a daily basis. Is that right? Is that right? The leadership of the agency is tracking headcount on a daily basis? Okay. Thank you. Nice to see you.
Hi, Council Member, and thank you for your questions. I just want to provide a little clarity as it relates to staffing. So over the last year, HRA has aggressively hired, again, 700 staff members, so 700 plus, right?
And how many have left during that time? That was my question, if you don't mind.
You want the attrition numbers,
I'm
right?
looking for the net increase in staffing over the course of the year. You said you hired 720 people. How many people left? Because my understanding is about the same number have left, and we're in the exact same position that we were at the start of the year. But if you want to tell me that I'm wrong, I'm happy to have it. We're just looking for the information.
Right, that's not correct. 700 have not left based upon the data that we have currently.
How many have left?
We will absolutely give you that.
Okay, but you all told the court that staffing was critical to the agency's plans to come into compliance and address the backlog. Is the information being reviewed on a daily basis by agency leadership? Your headcount.
Correct.
So why are you not able to provide it? When we gave it to you, we asked for this a week in advance. Why would you not come prepared to answer the questions? Why would you bring more junior staff than you did 10 months ago when this situation has only gone from bad to worse? First Deputy Commissioner Jill Berry, Administrator Lisa Fitzpatrick were here answering questions when we were concerned about these issues. Now, as the MMR shows, things are dire, truly dire, and you can't answer basic questions. I'm incredibly disappointed by this administration hiding the ball and really being disingenuous in not working and taking the work of this council and our oversight responsibility seriously. My next question is the hiring freeze. As a result of the hiring freeze that takes effect in 3 days, you will not be able to fill one vacant position that is unfilled as of today, correct?
The information that we have is the JOS and the SNAP
Those
staff.
are a one-for-one replacement when somebody leaves, but any position that is vacant as of October 1st will not be able to be filled, correct?
That is not the information.
That's a yes or no answer.
We've hired up at a rapid pace, as we've just said over the
But you're
course
not
of
answering
the
my
year.
question, ma'am.
And right now, our vacancy rates are negligible.
Excuse me? Your agency rates are?
They're negligible.
Negligible
Your
vacancy rates.
vacancy rates are negligible?
Yes.
Is that what you're trying to tell me?
That's
The data that I have is that there are
regarding the
3,266, agency-wide, there is over a 10% vacancy rate. That's a negligible vacancy? Is that what you just said on the record? Under oath? That's the statement you want to say? I just want to make sure you got your facts straight on that one.
We've hired I was just handing
The,
information. We've
the
hired
vacancy rate is
300
negligible. You're sticking by that
staff.
statement?
Excuse me?
You're sticking by the statement that the vacancy rate at HRA is negligible?
What I'm saying, you began your question speaking about the hiring freeze.
Okay.
Correct.
That was my question.
Okay,
And that
so,
it was a yes or no question that the hiring freeze only, that means that every vacant position in the agency that is vacant as of today cannot be replaced on October 1st. It's only additional people that leave after October 1st for certain positions that can be replaced on a one-to-one basis. It's just a yes or no question.
I was making a reference to vacancies that are connected to SNAP and cash assistance. And of course, I'll continue to be in conversations with OMB around hiring. These are ongoing questions.
The data I have on vacancies for
ongoing
cash assistance is
conversations.
626 vacancies, 19% vacancy rate for cash assistance. Is that accurate?
I didn't hear you.
626 vacancies, 19% vacancies for cash assistance. Is that correct?
I can't confirm those numbers. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
this is what I know. Oh, well, how about, what's the current backlog on the cash assistance applications?
Application
27,000?
27,000.
That's what I thought. So that means over the last 4 months, we've reduced the backlog by about 10,000 cases. Is that right?
Yeah, our frontline staff.
Yes, thank you. And so how is HRA going to address the next 25,000
Councilmember.
backlogging cases? If I could just finish this question, Chair, please. I'm so sorry. Over the next 4 months, as is required by the court injunction, when you're reducing the headcount further as a result of the hiring freeze. Could you lay out the plan for how that will happen?
So we're not reducing the headcount further based upon the information that we have. And please understand that while we're hiring, staff are not proficient the day after hiring. It takes a little while to be trained to become proficient in the process. So that's what's happening. And then also the volume that is coming in every month is contributing to the continued backlog. So the staff are, again, working extremely hard, tirelessly to bring this backlog down, but we are faced with historical volumes coming in each month. So we are making progress. Staff are being trained. They're getting to the point where they will become proficient. So OMB has allowed us to hire. HRA does not have huge vacancies in the SNAP and cash program.
Deputy Commissioner Johnson, I appreciate your being here, and I appreciate your work leading FIA. It is a critically important and challenging job, and we thank you for the work that you do. But if we've cut the backlog by 10,000 over the last 4 months, and we have 27,000 to go over the next 4 months, as is required by the court injunction, but with the hiring freeze, we're going to have fewer staff able to do the work, which is absolutely the case, there is no way that you'll be able to comply. And that means that things are going to get worse and worse and worse. And the dire situation that New Yorkers are facing today, unable to access the essential benefits that they need just to get by, is going to be absolutely catastrophic in the months to come. And I am, for one, am profoundly concerned about the misprioritization of this administration and cut on the backs of the most vulnerable New Yorkers. And we, as this council, need to do everything we can to push back. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. We will now hear from Councilmember Osei, followed by Councilmember De La Rosa.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good afternoon, or good morning. Wow, it's been a long day. I'm probably going to ask some questions that have already been asked before, but I just want to say that I don't want to speak for everyone, but I truly appreciate the work that you three and many of you within the agency do for the people of New York. You do not have an easy job. I hear the concerns that come through my office, and I'm sure many of the offices of my colleagues, and it's not easy, right? That's why we're seeing high vacancy rates. You're not being paid nearly as much as I think you should be for the amount of work that you are doing. You are frontline services that so many of our constituents and New Yorkers need. So I thank you. And Marika, we've corresponded many times about certain issues within our office. I'm greatly appreciative of the work that you do. I just want to just get a couple answers on, and I'm sure that they've been asked before, but approximately how many applications does each staff member work on per month, let's say?
Well, applications, they are not case loaded, so they come in as they come in.
Sure.
Workers take them on and work them through, so they don't reside at one with one caseworker.
Okay.
So there's no caseload round robin. It's round robin.
Okay, is there an approximate amount at all? Do we know, do we quantify that?
I would imagine that, that as, more senior would get through more applications more quickly than others who are still training up and getting versed in that.
Yeah,
that's how what I would
I hear you, and I think this number is so important because, again, like I think your work needs to be quantified. It provides, supporters and advocates within the council and any body of government to continue pushing for you so that your work is not subsidized with nonprofits and privatized in the direction that I perceive that this administration is trying to go in. I'm not sure if you are legislated to quantify the amount of cases and the amount of workload that you undergo, but we need to have a picture of the amount of work that our public service employees are working on, right? I really want to emphasize. Yeah, go ahead.
We have monthly numbers of the applications that come in, but per worker, we don't have those numbers. So you can repeat those numbers per month, which are monthly averages.
Yeah, so for cash assistance applications, this is as of August 31st, 2023. The average, for city fiscal year 23, it was approximately 40,000 cash applications per month. And then for SNAP, it was...
is it 32, 30?
Yeah, no worries. Was the commissioner here earlier? No?
Oh.
Honest question.
Thank you for your patience. And then for SNAP, for city fiscal year 23, the average is also about 40,000.
Mm-hmm.
And comparing and contrasting, pre-pandemic in fiscal year 19 for cash, it was 25,629, and for SNAP, it was 25,717.
That's a lot.
And also, council member, every family is unique. So a family that may have a household size of 1 or 2, that review of all, responses and information associated with the case may be accomplished and thoroughly looked at faster than, say, a larger family size with complexities involved in the case. So we definitely want to give each and every family, individual seeking services that attention and level of attention they deserve.
And approximately, and I'm sure that I could look this number up, but what is the average salary for a caseworker within your agency?
For the cash program, we have the job opportunity specialist, and the starting salary has actually reached an all-time high of $53,000. It's still entry level.
Not enough money.
We understand it, and it is considerably higher than what it had been a few years ago. And we understand that it's entry level, and we're fortunate that we have been able to recruit and identify some very talented people. Myself, Angela, will speak with brand new classes of hires to rah and kind of get them, to understand what HRA has to offer, and that they'll have mentorship opportunities, and kind of talk through how you can start entry level and kind of gradually work your way up within the ranks of HRA, because there's a lot of opportunity, and we believe in their abilities and grooming and growing them, as part of the organization, part of the team.
Well, listen, I feel for you guys, and I'm sure that it's sometimes rough to come up here. The commissioner should be in the seats that you are in today. I know you can't respond to that, but the more information that you give us in terms of how much pressure you're going through with the crisis, the many crises that exist in this city, the more we can advocate for us to create a more robust public service field within this city, right? I'm not sure what the intentions of this administration are, but cuts year in and year out is whittling down our public services, and we're putting that money into contractors sometimes that exist out of state. So appreciate the work that you do. I'm sorry that you have to sometimes take the beating for a lot of the decisions that are not made by you, but I hope that you know that you do have allies within this council that are pushing for you to have more resources, more staff to continue serving the people of our city.
And thank you for that, and we're always happy to come and be in front of council, but we also are happy to have continued conversations outside of the hearing room on various topics.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if I was dealing with thousands of cases a month or whatever, hundreds of cases a month, and then had to come up here and get, bonked over the head a couple times, I'd quit. Don't quit, please.
This is a serious issue. It's a serious matter.
Yeah.
The council is obviously concerned. The agency continues to be concerned. We're putting forth efforts, and we don't mind discussing those efforts.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, and I just wanted to just to share that we will have testimony from some workers at HRA that could probably better respond to the caseload questions. Councilmember De La Rosa.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I want to thank you for this important hearing. I want to thank y'all for coming. I share Councilmember Osei's sentiments and feeling horrible about the predicament that you three have been placed in. The commissioner should be here. The council is a partner, but is also a legislative body that deserves the respect of having the commissioner here in order to answer questions. And I agree with the frustration that has been expressed here, although I won't go into so much detail, but we know that there's a crisis at hand. The vacancy rates, I'm the chair of the Civil Service and Labor Committee. We've been talking about this for well over a year. The fact that the numbers are not being provided to this body does feel as though transparency isn't present. And the reason why it matters is, as you all know, is because there are critical services that communities across the city need delivered that aren't being delivered. So with that, I'm going to ask a few questions that actually come directly from my constituent services staff. So my district office has been working on many HRA benefit cases, and there's a few barriers to us being able to assist our constituents. One, HRA continuously closes cases without explanation, without a full understanding of why the cases are being closed. Two, when it's time for recertification, my staff, for example, would upload necessary documentation. By the time HRA caseworkers begin working on a case, the documents are considered old and would have to be resubmitted, delaying a delivery of benefits, even though the information remains the same. The HRA system is consistently down. So these are just 3 examples, there's way more on this list, of challenges that our staff has had to take on. In my community, we have an HRA center. The lines are around the corner. In addition to the lines being around the corner, 90% of the cases that are walking into our office are HRA related. And so I want to get an understanding of, one, what is happening on the other end of a system when cases are continuously closed. 2, why isn't there flexibility given the staffing shortages with the documentation that is being asked to be provided so people can stay on life-saving services? And 3, what is going on with the system as a whole that it is consistently down? If you could answer those 3 questions, then I have a few more.
Well, first, I know that my colleagues will have input on the questions. I want to thank you for that feedback. It's important to have connections to get that feedback, not just in this forum, but otherwise. It means if there are things that are redundant and happening with it coming into your office, we want to hear about them. We want to make sure that we have the appropriate information to make the right corrections. That being said, in terms of lines, we do know that there are issues in terms of like in the mornings and pacing of lines. That happens where people start queuing up a little bit earlier than the office opens, and then as a result of that, they have waits that dissipate throughout the day. We also know, there are times that they would think folks are getting more services at that time. I think when my colleagues can talk about the process of the queuing up process. So Would you like to do
And
that?
I don't necessarily need to know like what the process is for applying because I understand that. More, what is the process when a case is closed without explanation? What recourse is there? The other thing I would like to say that it would be so important for us to have a direct contact to our local centers. And I know I'm not the only council member that has this problem, but literally the center in my community is referring people to our office to fill out applications that should be filled out in the center. And I have 4 staffers that do this work. And we're all overburdened. The entire system is overburdened. But if we could get literally on a phone call with a manager at the Dykeman, because I'm going to mention the name, the Dykeman Job Center, the Dykeman Center, we could literally unblock some backlogs that are stuck for no other reason than there's not a human being that we can actually talk to get it unblocked.
Okay, so in each borough, we have regional managers and regional offices, and what we can do is supply the council with those numbers and names of those individuals, and that will be your contact if there are challenges or concerns, right? You asked a question about documentation, and the reason why we would, you wanted to know if there's a way to eliminate requiring documentation.
Not eliminate, but if there's a document that has been asked for 3 times, and the person has applied it 3 times, and by the time a caseworker gets to it, the document is considered old by your standards, but nothing has changed. Why is there not flexibility?
There should be, and that's something that we will take back and to training, and if those situations are happening, we will address that. The only documentation that would require to be updated is employment information. And unfortunately, because we do have backlogs, sometimes documentation related to employment will have to be updated. But anything outside of that, if it remains the same, nothing changes, we should not be asking for repeated documentation. But we will definitely take that back.
Just one more question, Madam Chair, if I may. There is an issue with IT. I don't know who runs your IT department or how the IT situation works, but for example, if a constituent, and this happens often, especially think about the population that we're serving, language access is not, always ready. A person has an email address. They no longer have access to that email address. They need to change or reset a password. We're not able to do that in the system. If a constituent uses a different email in order to, keep their account secure, they're not able to switch the email in the system.
You're talking about to access HRA?
Correct, their HRA account.
Okay, we'll definitely take that.
And the other thing that also happens as language access related in constituent services is that if a person has clicked that they need another language, they're waiting hours on the phone for someone to pick up the phone. When they pick up the phone, it's still an English speaker, they have to wait again. And so what this is causing is massive wait times for a person to get access to someone who will speak to them in their language. So I'd like for us to understand as a council sort of, are these contracted out services? What is happening in terms of being able to provide constituents with a direct access to the type of language that they need? There's some very severe issues with the way that constituents are interfacing with the HRA system.
So we do have staff that speak multiple languages, but we don't have a whole body of staff. So what we have contracted out is to our language line. So the individual calls and they speak a language and we don't have a staff that actually speaks that language, we connect them to our language line. So the language line contracted person is on the phone along with the worker, so to help through that interview process. So we do connect individuals with access to other languages. Okay.
I'd welcome a conversation. Maybe we can also bring some of our constituent services staff. There are a lot, I have pages of issues that our constituent staff is coming across and obstacles to getting people to services. When we have a family who comes into the office and they need emergency food stamps or they're not going to eat, we've had no other option but to either refer them to a local food pantry because the process for them getting an emergency benefit has just taken too long. And as you know, this is the difference between a family going with or without a meal. So I welcome the conversation and I look forward to us spending more time. I have a whole lot of questions about staffing, but I'll go for the next round. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. Now I have little bit of time to kind of gather some, I want to just to go back on some of the things, just because I need clarity on some of the testimony that we heard earlier. So in regards to the redeployment of staff, when you're reassigning, are those staffers that you're reassigning already trained in recertification application processing?
So when we reassign or redeploy staff to FIA operations, the job centers or SNAP, they're trained. They receive training on if they're interviewing on the phones or if they're processing. So they do receive training.
Because we're hearing from, you know, a lot of the advocates that not all staff is trained, and that's also leading to a lot of errors in the completion of the recertifications, and that's further impacting the backlog.
You know, we absolutely provide training because staff are coming from other areas of HRA that they're not familiar at all with the processes as it relates to cash and SNAP, so we have to train them.
So they have to be trained, okay.
There's also monthly trainings that target, you know, say, you know, common errors, so that way we know what they are, and then we can focus in on that and give training to all the staff, including the redeployed staff who are assisting in handling those cases.
Okay, and now in regards to the, hold on a second, I had another question here before I move on, because I'm all over the place. Thank you, sorry. In regards, and we also, I just want you to, again, I want to just reiterate that we do have staff that will be testifying a little later on, so it would be nice if somebody from the administration could stay to hear that testimony as well. In regards to the skimming, you know, situation and the theft of benefits, we've received a number of these applications, of these complaints, and I specifically have a friend who happens to be a senior citizen at one of his constituents in East Harlem, who had her food stamps stolen as part of this scam. She informed me of it. I explained that there at that time where, you know, there was no way of reimbursing her, that we were waiting to hear back from the state. When that became a thing and we were able to then apply for reimbursement of the benefits, I immediately called her. I sat there personally in my computer in my office, and I went through the whole application process for her. I sent it, she got a confirmation. I made sure that she got the confirmation. She has the app on her phone so she could tell me when exactly her benefits were stolen. Application was processed very expeditiously. You know, I appreciate that, but she was denied. Why was she denied? There was a discrepancy between the date that the food stamps were actually used and the date that it was posted on the actual card, on the statement. And so I said that the food stamps, I put on the application that they were stolen on the 7th because that's what the app was saying, but I guess that they were used on the 6th, and then it went on to you know, it was posted on the 7th. How many of the 15,000 applicants that have applied so far been denied? Do we know how many of those applications have already been approved versus how many have been denied? I know it's fairly new, but I also want to recognize that we did submit all of these questions to the administration a week ago. So there's really, you know, that's my understanding.
Right.
If you didn't get them, you need to have a conversation with somebody back home.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and for that individual case, we're happy to follow up directly with the constituent to find out and provide any additional.
Oh no, I got it fixed. I had to call the commissioner myself, and she fixed it. But you have the Deputy Speaker and the commissioner fixing something that shouldn't have been fixable because, you know, the information that she got was from the, you know, the app, and so we put in everything that needed to be, you know, submitted, and that could have easily been verified. But the fact that her food stamps had been stolen, I mean, somebody should have called, but she was, you know, so she was denied, and my concern is that, long story short, you know, that this has, you know, the propensity of continuing to happen. So I'm curious to know, out of the 15,000, well, you received 19,000 claims, processed 15,000, which you're very proud of. I'm proud of, you know, I'm happy for you, but out of those 15,000, I need to know specifically how many have been approved, how many have been denied, and why.
This is a new, as we discussed, this is a new process, and And thank you so much for bringing to our attention and highlighting the issue that you had with your friend, so we have the opportunity to take that back to examine the use of the dates and how that they align, and that makes quite a bit of sense. I have in front of me that 72% of SNAP cases have been approved. That number 7,254. Extrapolating out that the other 28% would have been denied. We don't have currently have a list of what the reasons would have been for those denials, and they could include things like errors and certainly not being able to verify the actual claim. So that was SNAP, and 48% have been approved within cash assistance, and that number is 2,519. So the other 52% at that number of cash assistance have been denied. And again, I don't have in front of me what those what errors or what issues could have caused denial of that benefit, but we can look into sharing that.
Yeah, that would be great if you could give us an idea, because I think it'll also give you an idea of, you know, any hiccups in the system that are preventing folks from getting, you know, benefits. So these are folks that have theoretically lost their benefits several months ago, you know, and are still kind of trying to catch up, and now we're imposing a further, you know, delay by not processing the application in a way that is going to lead to an automatic denial. It's not, you know, it's not helpful. In regards to and I'm sorry if I jump around here a little bit, but I just have so many things that I want to get to. But in regards to some of the intros, intro 567, you testified that the proposed legislation may lead to unintended consequences of duplicating inspection requirements, and perhaps most importantly, slowing the DHS's ability to rapidly provide shelter space for families. I don't necessarily, you know, I can't accept that as a response, because the alternative means that we're putting families in situations that are unsafe, and oftentimes families with children, and we've seen, you know, several high-profile cases where, you know, children have died in such situations. And so I would hope that, you know, the administration would work with, you know, the sponsoring member to try to figure out the best route forward without, you know, because I think that I'm assuming we both have the same shared goal, right? We want to make sure the folks are housed, you know, in safe units. And, you know, the fact that, you know, some of these landlords have notoriously been cited for, you know, rat infestations, you know, leaking and faulty heaters, gas situations. I mean, these are pretty egregious and serious complaints that should be addressed for any resident, you know. But if we are contracting and somebody's actually making money off of the city to house somebody in those conditions, that's unacceptable. Intro 651, I just want to clarify that children are not required to be at PATH the entire stay of the process, throughout the duration of the processing?
They can be remote. They can
at
be
the
remote.
initial.
In the initial.
Okay.
Yes.
So if I'm there, I don't know, if I'm there the whole day, I'm assuming sometimes people may have to come back, right? If they're put in temporary, and they may have to come back the next day for whatever reason. I have, you know, I can show, you know, I can show the child remotely that first hour, the rest of the day. Like, I'm not required to bring this kid back, right? Like,
right. The remote, whatever the process of assessment at the PATH Center, where at the point where there's an acknowledgement of all the family members, that's when they can appear remotely, and they are not required to come to subsequent visits.
So then
to
this
PATH.
law should just kind of codify you're expressing kind of somewhat exist already.
I do feel like, we, again, shared goals and making sure that the young people who are going through this process have the opportunity to do so in a seamless manner. I'm sure that there's more discussion that we can have about the details of the bill.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not trying to hinder, we're trying to make it so that children don't have to wait around, for hours, which makes it also a very unpleasant experience for the parents who now, dealing with children that are restless and hungry and tired and, tired of sitting there. It's not a good situation. I've been there. Regarding intro 902, you referenced that there was a concern that adding a navigator to this process would impact a carefully designed process and represent a costly budget expansion. Could you please explain what you mean by costly? Because if we're hiring a navigator or two, I don't understand how that would be such a huge hindrance to the budget.
I think, again, we have shared goals and there's further conversation that can be had, and for clarity, I think at this point in the reading of and review of the legislation, we're not exactly sure where this would end up in terms of the numeric requirement or whatever, and we want to make sure that we continue to have conversations around that, as well as we feel that the process in and itself is unique, and it allows for clients to get the exact process that is being envisioned by the legislation. So again, lots more conversation that we can have in terms of the details of the bill.
And I have some questions that I will reiterate at the end of my questioning so that you can then report back on. Regarding the on-demand line, what is the capacity for the info line and how many calls get dropped by the system on average? I know my staff is texting me. I have a constituent services staffer that's texting me, like a crazy person. She's watching now. Hey, hello. And is, complaining about this and, the fact that it takes so long, right, to make these calls on behalf of the constituents when they use the regular info line. Is taking them sometimes hours, and then they get dropped and then they have to start all over again. What is the capacity there?
Regarding capacity, we've not experienced any busy signals since the inception of the info line at one number. Then we've offered nearly 6 million calls. We've covered nearly 6 million calls from February of 2023 to August of 2023. This is quite a number. We acknowledge that there are wait times on that line. Also, there is an opportunity to have a callback where you keep your place in line and you are able to.
And how many workers are assigned to manage the info line? Do we know?
I don't have the head count for.
Okay. I'm gonna add that to the list.
Add that to the list. Yes, we're happy to follow up.
Line staff. Okay. Sorry, I gotta write it down immediately, or it goes away. And also, if you could include what the average call wait time is, that would be fantastic. Could you share with us in regards to the city FEPS application, and congratulations on yesterday's announcement. I know that the expansion is, one of the ways that we can utilize the existing resources to help give families choice. So, it's a good thing that people get to decide, right? If they want to leave the state or, they have family elsewhere, they're able to get there. Obviously, we have a bunch of questions on that, but I'm going to start with the number of applications for city FEPS that are taking longer than 60 days to process. Do we know how many applications are delayed to date? And quite frankly, I've been hearing from a lot of providers as well that the number of cases, eviction cases that are being processed to date is pretty, is continuing to grow, because city FEP's disbursement of checks are not happening on a timely basis. So, landlords are not getting paid. As a matter of fact, I have a family now that the commissioner is helping me with who has the same situation. And this is the second time that I've had to call on her behalf in the last year. This is the second time that her landlord has served her with, notification. She was a former shelter resident. She has a beautiful apartment in one of those brand new, buildings that has set aside for homeless families. And she continuously gets threatened with eviction because DHS or HRA, whoever is in charge of processing, payments to the landlord is not doing so. So would love to kind of understand what the deficiencies are there and why.
So, in terms of city FEPs, the application process itself, it's as you're very familiar with this, is each case is unique. It's a unique processing. We don't. We've never. I believe that at this point we're not tracking the 30-day number. I would happy to circle back on that. With the exact numbers, we do understand that in specific cases there are some payment delays as well, and so we're always looking to correct that. So we have opportunities within the agency to respond to any delays in terms of like just working through our specific units.
And I would love to see some sort of a corrective action plan there as well, because, the agency that's tasked with ensuring that people are not homeless is now contributing to a large number of people being threatened, but, with eviction because of lack of payment. And this is what I mean when I say that, a lot of our issues are internal. We have funding, we have the resources that we're supposed, that we need to ensure that these things don't happen. And I don't know how the agency operates their internal, staffing processes, but, in my office, I tell my staff, if there is an emergency, if somebody has no food, if somebody has no shelter, if somebody has no gas, if somebody's refrigerator is broken, those are all things that, present a real, challenge for families. Like, we're not gonna go home until we know exactly what's gonna happen, right? So by 5 o'clock, if you don't have a response, then you need to communicate that to me, and I will gladly take that case over. But we do not abandon it until we get it, rectified as quickly as possible, because we don't want families to be sleeping on sidewalks or in public spaces, and we don't want people going without food. So we also make sure that if a person had a skimming issue, right? Somebody that your benefits were stolen. Okay, well, what resources do we have available to ensure that you have food until we're able to rectify this? Like, those are conversations that we're having, and I expect that this agency that is tasked with this is doing the same. And I get that there are a lot of, emergencies and things that are happening and competing priorities, but we cannot, especially in light of a housing crisis, be speaking out of both sides of our mouths, right? We cannot say we have a housing crisis and we're not doing enough to rectify this, or units are not available, but then, we're contributing to the, growing eviction cases because we're not processing applications on time, right? If there's a delay, then there has to be maybe an MOU between the housing courts that, can help flag and identify clients who are recipients of these programs, who should be receiving payments, so that they're not having to worry about going there. Because I get it, I understand the system well, but when you get a notice that you're being evicted, I mean, it's pretty alarming, you know? It's a scary process to go through, and at least the people in this room should not be a part of that equation. Like, we should not be participating in that. So, in terms of the home-based locations, they're contracted to process the city FEPs to move, city FEPs to stay and FEPs to move applications. We're hearing from constituents that the wait time to get an appointment at home-based locations is still very long. Some home bases are not able to provide an appointment until 2024. These delays are causing evictions because households cannot get shopping letters and cannot get their applications processed once they find an apartment.
We're working with home-based programs in whatever ways that we can, as they are experiencing large demands, you know, due to cases with arrears from the last few years. So there's a huge demand, and we're partnering with them. Which we're enhancing technology. We're work on cases with the programs at HRA, and expand our city perhaps processing application process. So we're partnering with them as we feel like they're seeing a larger demand, which is causing their backlogs. So we're able to help them navigate.
What does that help look like?
To my notes, it looks like we're working with keeping abreast of the challenges, as well as working through technology with them, so trying to help them get through their process.
Has HRA attempted to grow the network to meet, you know, the demand?
In terms of the number of home-based facilities, I'm not familiar with any growth at this time. Oh, thank you. We'll get back to you.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, colleagues. We will have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Yeah, that's a pretty big deal, guys. So, all right. I'm gonna try to attempt to to get through these other questions. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that I did ask all of these. In terms of indexing, are you still indexing cases by hand?
Indexing through when a person uploads a document. So we have staff that indexes the documents once it's scanned by the client or the applicant.
So if somebody's submitting the application electronically, is the back end process still by paper?
It's not by paper. When it's uploaded electronically, the worker gets it in a queue, and primarily it's clerical staff, and we also have redeployed staff helping there as well, and they just index the documents electronically. Nothing is done on paper.
Okay. All right. And constituents obviously keep reporting that they're being asked to upload the same documents time and time again. Are you aware of this issue, and are you tracking these complaints?
I think that we are hearing anecdotally that that's happening either through other council members who have shared those anecdotal indexes. We don't feel like it's a systemic issue, and we're looking to address them individually as they come to our attention.
Okay. Regarding one-shot deals, how many cases can RAU staff process on an average per week or month basis with current headcount versus fully staffed without overtime or reassigning staff from other units?
So thank you for the question. We don't track data in that way in terms of how many per week per head count. So unfortunately, we don't have a number that we can assign to that value. We currently have we currently onboarded approximately 185 staff members in that role. So I can offer that in terms of our current head count, and that is done quite a bit to help us get through our processing.
Does HRA have a person or a unit that is specifically designed to work in collaboration with legal services and nonprofit groups that are helping folks navigate eviction to get, to kind of lend some clarity, right, to when these things are happening, right, so that you're not hearing about them after the fact and are creating, correction action plans or, really allow yourselves the ability to make the changes, right, in real time. Because there always seems to be a disconnect between what we hear at the hearings and what we're hearing, from our nonprofit partners. And, so it makes me wonder, and I've had, meetings where we bring in the collective, right, of stakeholders to hear from them and to get input, right, because they're doing this work, day in and day out. They better understand, like, where the nuances are, where the hiccups are, where we need to be doing more, where we need to be doing less. Is that something that HRA does? Is there a space for community partners to provide input and feedback?
I think that you want to speak to it, Andrew? Okay. So, elected officials can contact us via the one number and follow the prompts. It'll help them to be queued up to someone from constituent services that will assist them. And we require authorization, and whether verbal or written, to speak on behalf of a client from the elected official or the person is advocating for the client. But you also can email constituent affairs at dss.nyc.gov.
And somebody's responsible for manning that
Yes.
email and responding?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, listen, I appreciate any level of, of access, but I think that there's that system lacks that personal, connection for real-time communication with your partners that are seeing this. Because sometimes when we're, in it, we don't necessarily see, right, like the issues that they're identifying, right, and they're real. So I just, I find it helpful. Now, regarding the announcement yesterday, I don't know if all of the details have been ironed out yet in regards to the city FEP's authorization to go outside of the state. If an individual, to your knowledge, if an individual decides that they wanted to come back and transfer back to New York City, is that something that's possible?
I'm not sure. I mean, as you stated, it's a new announcement. It makes sense that the voucher is being available throughout the state would continue to be accessible in New York City. That makes sense to me. Now, I'm not sure how we would move forward. Yes, they can ask for a transfer.
They can ask for a transfer, okay. And the amount of time that the voucher will be paid out, is that like in perpetuity, so long as the person is continuing to qualify, or is there like a time frame for which they have access to this voucher?
Again, it's new. It makes sense at this point that it would continue with the traditional requirements with eligibility.
Okay. Hold on, give me 1 second. Okay. Can you tell, and again, I don't know that you're gonna have this answer yet, but I would really like to know, since HRA is the one that does responsible for doing the apartment inspections, like who's gonna be doing the inspections for out-of-state units. And the administrative capacity for staff to handle that when there are already delays in the processing of the rental assistance and benefits. And also, what is the city's oversight, right? Ability in, for these out-of-state vouchers. Out-of-city, sorry. Okay, we're gonna send these to you as
Yes,
well.
yes, we would appreciate those, the program being as new as it is, we would appreciate a little time to get that information to you.